And it's already recording. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Robinson School Building Committee for Tuesday, October 21st. I'll first take a minute for any public comment, and I do not see any members of the public in our attendee list. So I'm going to move to meeting minutes to stay on top of our business. So there was an attachment in the email to everyone for the minutes from October 7th. Did anyone have any feedback, edits, concerns, or motions?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
And a sec. Who was the second? Tom?
Me.
Thanks. Okay, all in favor of approving October 7th minutes? Steve?
Just abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
I'm an aye. Tom Wimberg?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Dr. Chu?
Aye.
Lindsay?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I don't see Tom, so John?
Aye.
And that's it. Okay. Great. All right. So the purpose of today's meeting is a kickoff with Vertex. So you'll see some new faces on the call. We're very happy to welcome you to this group. I took a stab at some general agenda topics and thought we would start with some introductions, if that works for everybody. I'll get started, I guess, and then I'll just call on people to make it a little bit clear. So my name is Valerie Young. I'm the chair of the Robinson School Building Committee and the vice chair of the Westford School Committee. I've been on for 5 years. I'm a parent of 2 kids in school. And that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to just go in order of the screen. This is not a hierarchy or anything. Steve, you're next in my window.
Steve Taylor, president for 5 years, have 2 kids in the school system. Just basically on here for my minimal experience and input in the industry, since I have the illustrious whatever I was going to say, of working in the public construction market for many, many years, right? So that's all I got.
Thanks, Steve. Tom Wimberg?
Hi, Tom Wimberg. Been in town since 1980. Had a kid, Golda Robinson. I'm the representative from the Permanent Town Building Committee.
Great. Why don't we save the Vertex members all together at the end? So Jeff Goodwin?
Yeah, Jeff Goodwin, Director of Facilities. I've been here with the town just a little over 4 years, and this is my first potential building project of this magnitude. So looking forward to working with you.
Thanks. I've got Dr. Chu next.
Hi, yes. So this is going to be my 13th year in the district, my 5th year as superintendent. And I was able to participate in an MSBA process in a previous district in building a new high school about 15 years ago.
Lindsay?
Good afternoon, Lindsay Richard, Vice Chair of the Robinson School Building Committee. I've been a resident here in Westford for the last 6 years. I've got 2 students in the district, elementary school students, and also in my professional career have experience working on public school projects in Massachusetts.
Thanks. Kristen?
Good afternoon. Nice to see you again, Brian and Chin. Nice to meet you, Anissa. I'm Kristen Last, the town manager. I've been the town manager for a little over 2.5 years, and I have done an MSBA project for a new elementary school in the previous community that I worked in, and looking forward to working with you all.
Thanks. And John Cunningham?
Yeah, John Cunningham, Select Board Clerk. I've been a resident for 30 years, working on various committees over 20 years.
Great. Why don't we have Brian kick off the Vertex team?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Brian Jarvis, Managing Director with the Vertex Companies. I've been with the Vertex OPM Group, formerly the Compass Project Management Group, for better part of 17 years. Happy to be here. A lot of MSBA experience in those 17 years, including their first project, Norwood High School, all the way up till current projects that we're working on, not only with Westford, but in Framingham. I've worked with Chin and Anissa on previous projects. Excited about what you have in front of you. I think it'll be an exciting challenge, but definitely a benefit to the town as you move forward. Been in construction for over 20 something years, AEC experience, a lot of public construction work in that time as well. Personally, golden retriever, I have 2 kids, married, my wife's a math teacher in high school. My boys actually are, one just graduated college and one is still in college. So newly an empty nester. So that's an interesting experience. Sports fan, outdoor fan, golfer, all that good stuff. So happy to meet you guys and looking forward to working with you. Chen?
Chin Lin, and I'm a registered architect, and I'll be and I was registered architect doing public school construction work as a designer for over 20 years before coming over to do OPM work. And I'm also a potter. I do have a pottery studio on the side, and that most recently I have most relevant project compared to your project is the Westwood Pine Hill Elementary School. That was they also have 3 enrollment options, and then had to go through the process of enrollment selection and redistricting, and we successfully delivered that in 2024. Anissa?
Hi, my name is Anissa Ellis, and I have been at Vertex for about 3.5 years. And prior to this, I worked for a couple of general contractors. I'm working on the Norwood Middle School that's wrapping up right now. It's probably the most relevant project to yours. And I have 2 girls, a middle schooler and an elementary schooler, and that keeps me very busy. So
Great. Nice to meet you all. So I'll hand it over to Brian in a second. I just have on the agenda too, just to keep everybody in the loop about the steps for the contract execution and the MSBA OPM review panel. We are on track for that November 3rd meeting. The MSBA just yesterday confirmed receipt of our OPM selection narrative and many attachments and exhibits, and gave us kind of the green light on that. So we're awaiting any unforeseen questions there, but otherwise things seem to be all set. And that meeting will be November 3rd for the OPM review panel. That does not that there is no expectation that the committee attend that. So that'll be a much smaller group, but we will obviously keep you all in the loop on that. Okay, let's see if you have sharing ability.
Yeah, I'll take a look, and I'll just add to that. We typically will do a small presentation, about 5 to 6 slides for the OPM panel. It's kind of a boilerplate. Obviously, we've been in front of them many times, so it's more geared towards the OPM feeling comfortable. I mean, excuse me, the MSBA feeling comfortable that you have an OPM that understands what they're doing. So again, we've been in front of them many times. I'll put that together, get that off through you to them prior to the 3rd, and we should be all set to go.
Great.
Not a big deal. And I'll see if I can share. All right, can you all see that?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
And should be able to do a slideshow. Does that work? Can you see that as a slideshow? Okay. Yeah, so just a quick intro to our team. We already did that to some extent, and kind of for those of you who weren't part of the selection committee, kind of an overview of kind of what we talked about and kind of next steps. For those of you who have MSBA experience, some of it will be familiar. For those of you who have not, hopefully it's a quick intro to that. As far as schedule, big picture schedule, kind of next step schedule, designer selection process. We'll run through it quickly. Really just want to have a conversation, get to know everybody as well. And then once we get through the MSBA's panel on the 3rd really jump into really kicking stuff off and being able to get paperwork going back and forth. And I'll run through all this. Chin talked through some of it at the interview, and we'll kind of tag team that a little bit, but then really talk about your questions. So just quickly on the team, you've already met Anissa, Chin, and myself. Bill Kozlowski, longtime industry superintendent, construction manager, site manager for us, who would come in during the
Brian, I
construction
hate
phase.
to interrupt you, but your
Oh.
slide did not advance.
Did not advance. Okay. Can you see it now?
No, you may
Not
need
yet.
to switch. You may need to switch screens.
How about that?
There it is.
There you
There.
go.
All right, so that was our team. I was just mentioning Bill Kozlowski would be site manager for us. Can you see that now?
Whoops.
No.
It went,
Too many screens.
Yeah,
How's that, better?
Nope.
no.
No, it's like
There
zoomed
it
now,
is.
in.
yes.
Okay,
Okay, there we
yeah,
go.
that's good.
Yeah, I got it open on multiple screens. So Bill Kozlowski will be a construction site manager, come on when the project gets to a construction phase, help out during drawing reviews, et cetera. Mary Cuppins, who's the head of our project accounting, really a ton of experience the last 17 years with the MSBA. She's kind of an expert as far as MSBA process goes regarding reimbursement process. Our accounting team's processed over 1.6 billion for rated to school projects to date. Dylan McIntosh joins us as a sustainability expert. Really involved with a lot of our projects from that perspective, a lot of hands-on experience and educational background. Meredith Borden, who's worked with us in the last handful of projects, opening them up and really doing move coordination, especially with Chin and Anissa, as far as coordinating, getting the old school into the new school, if we're consolidating multiple school moves, things of that nature. So a really strong team that's worked together. And at Vertex, we do have in-house resources in some of our other practice areas, if you will, that can help out along the way. If you need technical assistance or a third opinion or whatever it might be, we can pull people in as needed. All AEC related expertise, because that's what I think really sets us apart, is the additional things that we do are all related to construction projects, which is great, including some really industry-wide experts in things like scheduling, environmental air quality, building envelope, and forensics. So we have those resources at our disposal. The sub-consultants that we carry for this project, PM&C, they're a leading estimator for public construction in Massachusetts. Cropper GIS, who's a redistricting consultant, because that obviously would be a component of the solutions that we might have in front of us here. And then IDS, Interval Data Systems, we've partnered with them on recent projects over the last few years, simply because how sophisticated some of these projects are getting and buildings are becoming related to the MEP systems, the HVAC, et cetera, and as far as the controls go. So IDS is really a specialist in going beyond what an MSBA provided commissioning agent will do, and really dialing that building in to optimize it and make sure that it's running as efficiently as possible, and really hitting those energy and usage targets that you want. Anything that we identify for incentive or rebates. And we've had great success on the last handful of projects of really getting those buildings streamlined. Just a little bit about our experience for those who didn't happen to see it. A lot of elementary school experience all listed here in the last handful of years. We've seen about every elementary school project configuration and approach that you can think of. So we have a lot of experience in all the different aspects that I think are going to come into play here, especially around grade configuration and enrollment options and redistricting, talking about how potential solutions impact not only the subject school or schools that might be combined on a particular solution, but also how it affects the district. So a lot of what you see here on the right side was, although the schools highlighted in green, the enrollment might have been in the 500s up to 1,000. It actually impacted many more students in the district because of how you're moving things around or reconfiguring your other schools. So that's going to be a major aspect, and Chin can talk more about that as we move through, because there's a lot of things that go into that. As you see in the bottom, it's just not the technical, physical aspects of the building project, but it really becomes operational, social, emotional, educational, how all of that goes into a solution. That's something that, working closely with the designers team when they come on board, with the school committee, with the district, with the building committee, that will start to vet out over the next several months. high-level MSBA process. I know most of you have seen a slide similar to this. I've even seen in some of your slides as you've presented to the town and to the district, kind of just the big process of working with the MSBA, kind of the core program, all the modules that you have. You know, you're kind of rounding out, forming the team, if you will, getting an OPM on board, and then moving into a feasibility study once the designer gets on board. And that first phase of the project is really the feasibility schematic, where we come up with what the preferred solution is going to be, and then move into the funding stage, which would be your votes, and then obviously all the way through detailed design, construction, and completing the project. Kind of walk through your baseline reimbursement. I think you guys are at 48% and change, and kind of understanding of eligible costs and how that comes into play throughout design and in construction. And when we start talking about potential solutions of, you know, what ineligible costs might be associated with potential solutions could be a factor. But yeah, a lot of experience with that process. The MSBA in August just did up their reimbursements, not only construction square foot costs, but also FF&E and technology, which is great for you. So that's they recognize the cost of schools has gone up, and we can talk more about that. We do have a little cheat sheet for you as well, related to the acronyms that the MSBA use. We can send that along after today, kind of the alphabet soup, which will help you out. Big picture schedule. So this was in our presentation during our interview. You know, the MSBA's process for feasibility schematic is really about 2 to 2.5 years. You can't do it much faster than 18 months, just given the timeframes that you need for some of the deliverables, and then the timing and cadence of the MSBA board meetings. And we typically say, you know, the schedule basically moves in 2-month increments, and typically only moves back in 2-month increments, because you can only do it in so quick, which is about 17, 18 months at the fastest point. And then if you move it back, you're basically moving it back in the cadence with MSBA board meetings, which happen every 2 months. So like if you miss a month, you really miss 2 months. And the way that this is set up is the designer selection process, which is going to take the better part of 3 or 4 months, and I'll show that shortly. Get a designer on board early next year, go into your PDP phase, which is your preliminary design program, which is all your options. Preferred schematic is where you start to narrow that down to the chosen solution. But what's really important is the yellow bar we talked about during the interview. That is really talk about the enrollment redistricting option, because that decision needs to be made before you can actually pick the final, you know, the preferred solution, if you will. You're gonna have a bunch of options out there that are going to impact enrollment, configuration, redistricting. That decision needs to be made, so then you can say, okay, this is where we want to go with regarding those factors. These are the potential options that apply to that, and then which one do we want to pick from there. So we can't get to a final preferred solution until that's done. So that really has to be done on a parallel path. Once that happens, we go into schematic design, and then right now kind of leading towards a town approval process in the fall of 2027. So that puts us out about 18 months from once a designer gets on board, about 2 years overall. So that's about right for an MSBA project. You can't do it too much faster than that. They do give you that 2.5-year window, but that's, you know, the pro and con of it. That's how fast as it goes, which is a very thorough and detailed process. Just looking at that in a little bit of a, you know, simpler form is, you know, you form the team. PDP is really about what's going into the building, your ed plan, you know, what all needs to be part of the solution. And then the PSR is really about where is it going to be located? What does the configuration look like? That kind of completes your feasibility, come up with a preferred solution. And SD is, okay, how much is it going to cost? What's the duration look like? Get all the schematic design type stuff done, and then fund it. And then you go through design, development, and construction. These are some of the, yep.
Clarification that redistricting is really, if you go back one more slide, that the decision there is to select an A enrollment option, not you don't have to draw the district line at that point. It just simply you pick the enrollment option at that time.
Correct. And then you have to figure out how you want to redistrict, you know, kind of as you go through it, but that obviously comes part and parcel together. And just, you'll see this slide as we move through future building committee meetings, as we start to kind of update and start to check off some of these major deliverables. But these are kind of, again, kind of a breakdown of what you're doing in each one of these stages, just for easy reference. And we'll send this out afterwards for folks to review, and kind of a, you know, another way of looking at major things that you're doing and kind of on that timeline. You know, all these two slides really go together. And from a decision point, the responsibilities matrix, if you will, of what the school building committee is going to do, of what you really need to vote on, what you need to be commenting on, and what you need to be, looking at and reviewing as we move through it. We'll put together a full work plan once we get the designer on board, as far as kind of starting to draft out and outline out potential building committee agendas as we start to move through the deliverables. But at the end of the day, the school building committee is really talking about, voting on any MSBA submission that goes in, voting on short list of options, creating the evaluation criteria, obviously reviewing and commenting on all of the technical and educational aspects that go into a building, the plans for community outreach. The enrollment redistricting decision is really a school committee decision. So that's that parallel path that we're talking about, kind of bringing that back to the school building committee with, okay, this is what we want to do as a district. This is what we decide how we want to work on for enrollment. So what are the options that we're now considering? That final preferred option for the PSR and the budget schedule scope that goes as part of the schematic design, we really want the school committee to vote and endorse that. But ultimately, it's the school building committee's decision and vote to move that forward to the MSBA. So again, we'll time all this out as we get closer to a work plan with the designer, but that's generally where we're going. We talked about this slide already, kind of like in enrollment configurations, how many students get impacted, how we manage that throughout the district. This is an example Chin talked about in the interview we did this in Westwood as far as their enrollment configurations, meaning the subject school, the Hanlon, was the one that was the subject school, but there was also 2 other elementary schools that needed to be considered. They looked at all the different options of how you could possibly come up with a solution that met the town's need, but also keeping in mind that there's other schools that are affected by that decision. And the takeaway that we really put a lot of effort into is, how are the other schools affected by the decision, and what needs to be considered when you're making a choice. And the goal is to draft something like this that basically says this decision impacts these other schools in this way. So then when you're making a decision and narrowing it down for the many options to this option, you really understand the impact and what needs to happen throughout the district and some of the other schools, because that will be one of the biggest questions for folks in school that may not be part of a building that their children will attend. What's in it for us as far as our children's experience in the other schools that remain in the district. So we had kind of drafted this out during the interview, kind of like setting up this project with, a first pass of what something might look like with all of the schools that are in play here. And this is something with the designer, with the consultants that we bring on board, and obviously with the school building committee and the school committee start to really vet this out. With that, I'll take a quick break. We went through a lot of stuff quickly, but any general questions on MSBA process, I can go back to any of the slides, and then go from there.
Yeah, Lindsay?
On the slide, thank you. This is all really great information presented in a good way. On the slide for where you had the votes by the school committee in our committee here,
Yep.
I'm curious, and others might be as well, about how the town select board fits into the process and what votes may or may not need to be taken. Because I think, really understanding a roadmap for all committee meetings across the town would be helpful.
Yeah, so the run up to town approval really will start to bring in those types of, that's usually the baseline as far as the engagement with school committee, select board, FinCom, those types of committees that you have in town, kind of their review of the process, their endorsement of the funding plan and the numbers and the budget and the schedule. Usually running up to town meeting as we go through the roadshow of all the town committees and boards that would need to be involved. In this instance, where you might have a bigger decision where it's going to impact other buildings within the district and the potential future use of those buildings, we probably want to be out ahead of that with the select board and FinCom as we start to narrow down options, getting to kind of a preferred solution. But realistically, you really want to get through PDP with all your options and then kind of understand the enrollment decision. And then you start to engage with, okay, this is where we think a project's going to look like. And then it's the lead up to town meeting in that fall of 2027 where we really get out in front of all those public boards and committees. And the
Okay.
goal would be that you go into town meeting, obviously with unanimous if possible, which is usually the case, support from all, school committee, finance committee, select board and building committee to kind of bring that forward to town meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Kristen?
Yeah, just going to dovetail on that. Thank you for bringing that question up, Lindsay. As this committee is appointed by the select board, I think that we probably should schedule in a cadence of an every 6-month update.
Yep.
Where it makes sense. And I provide the select board with weekly updates. So if anything is popping that I need to provide them an update with, just in an email form, we can work that through as well.
Yeah,
But
great.
the more information we can get out there, we have a lot of people who watch both our school committee meetings and our select board meetings. So however we can get it through with updates, even if we're not at a decision point, I think the community would appreciate that.
Yeah, and frequently we'll do, obviously there's going to be times where we're at school committee more frequently, obviously around the enrollment discussions and some of the, things that we need to consider. Quarterly updates to the school committee in general typically is a good thing just to plan. And then you're right, like select board, I would say every 6 months. Our monthly report that goes out to you folks is something that could be distributed to them as well. So they kind of have their finger on the pulse of the project. And then, a cadence with more formal updates. Absolutely. That's something we do on most of our projects.
Yeah, and this particular project, we will have to have another set of meetings that we will be looking to run through the school committee in terms of making sure that all the issues that need to be addressed in the enrollment selection and potential impact. Right now that you potentially would be going into a K-5 option as a scenario, and then so that again any of those decisions will be going through school committee. So there may be other votes that will be taken that's not directly or implied that in the MSBA process that we will want to have and as a record to submit as a package of support.
Great. John, I saw your hand. Did your question get answered?
Yes, I think so. Kristen answered that very well. And I think it's just a matter of the select board being made aware of where we are, what the schedules is, and anything that impacts cost or schedule. So I think that regular update, and then Tom and I can help with that too.
Great.
So good point.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Anything else? Okay. So moving on. So next steps, designer selection. So obviously after the OPM selection panel, we'll be able to move into designer selection. For those of you who have been through it, kind of a quick update here. So unlike the OPM selection, designer selection is really run by the MSBA. They have a designer selection panel, 16 members, 13 of which are appointed from all different organizations within the industry. And then you have 3 designees from the district, chief exec, which is typically town administrator, town manager, mayor, something like that, superintendent, school committee, or a designee. Those are the 3 representatives that go and sit as part of the designer selection panel. We will definitely be working with the district and the team as we go through the designer selection process. Like we will help with the solicitation, the RFS, receiving everything, reviewing everything, reference checks, meeting with the larger group, but also the 3 representatives that are appointed to understand. So everyone's on the same page. So when you go to that meeting, the communication has been done because, in our experience, the district really wants to have a unanimous voice, if you will. And then we present cases for why this is, the district will present a case why they feel that the recommended designer is the best fit for the project and for the district. However, it's at the end of the day, it's ultimately the DSP's decision. I've only seen it done once where they don't go with the recommended designer for the district. There is a little bit of, they try to spread the wealth, if you will, with designers. That being said, typically they follow the recommendation of the district simply because there's mitigating factors. So it becomes very important when we do the RFS about getting the right criteria to fully vet the designer. So you're getting a designer with the experience, with the types of project that we have in front of us, so that if you feel comfortable with 1, 2, or 3, if you will. But obviously we'd go with a united voice of with our recommended choice. I have brief schedule outline that I'll share, but what it comes down to is realistically November 3rd, kind of the green light to go forward with everything, and targeting the early February designer selection panel. So there'll be 2 meetings. Typically there are 2 meetings. The first one is the recommendation of, this is who we received, that we're recommending this short list. We all agree with the short list. And then basically the second meeting would be an interview with those designers that would be presented to designer selection panel, and then they would make their decision from there. So it'd be kind of back-to-back meetings. And then from there, you're off and running with the designer after you negotiate the fee and then move forward. So sometime in early March is what the higher level schedule talked about. And when we break down the lower level schedule, that's where we're at. Some of the things to think about, and I'll show that schedule in a second, just understanding, what we want the designers to be looking at, the sites that we're talking about, obviously the subject school property, as well as a potential other site, who they're carrying for their consultants, what they would need to bring to the table for that. Anything related to pre-K, considering what might be happening with reconfiguring of buildings, redistricting experience, considerations for model school, if that's something that you're interested in, cost-effective MSBA as they're potentially follow-on projects for the district and the town, and obviously folks that know how to design cost-effective projects throughout the MSBA process, to create, again, trying to create as refined of similar projects as possible. Any other concerns, and then just how we want to vet all of that. One of the questions for today, and don't necessarily need to answer it today, but just is there's going to be a specific subcommittee, or do we want to have a working group with representatives from the larger building committee that then rolls kind of all this up to a building committee meeting, and you kind of make decisions at the building committee level? The only reason I say that is because the subcommittees can extend the duration a little bit depending on meeting cadence and if you want it to be a public meeting and things like that. So we've seen it done both ways, whatever you're more comfortable with. But that's really, I'll stop sharing this and I'll share the schedule in a little bit more detail, and that should now pretty much wrap it up. I can find it. Everyone see that schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a Word document. Got it?
Yes.
Yep. So assuming OPM panel in 11.3, which sounds like that was confirmed, realistically, we'd have a draft ready to go kind of right after that for review by the committee, or for the school, for the building committee. And again, this is where it comes into play with how many meetings do you want to have to actually review this. It is a standard template from the MSBA. It recycles a lot of the stuff that you used on the OPM RFS. There's only certain areas that you can manipulate, so to speak, and that's some of the things we talked about in those bullet points. So the SBC would kind of get to a point where we feel like this is okay, this is what we want. That does have to go and get reviewed by the MSBA. They do take a week or two to get that back to you with their comments, that then get put into the RFS, which then is basically approved, able to get that notified through central register and all the other ways to disseminate that. A walkthrough, kind of like just drafting through this schedule, kind of targets a walkthrough, which might line up with winter break, which would be great to have folks get through the school if needed. The fact that we are kind of into the holiday season when this is going to be coming available, thinking that 4 weeks to allow designers to actually receive it, but then have enough time to really put some thought into it and get responses back by early to mid-January. We then have to submit all that information to the MSBA, at which time we would take the lead on helping you with reference checks, and the committee would have a chance to review everybody's responses and get all that put together to kind of come up with a short list of who we think designers, top 3 designers would be, and get that to an MSBA DSP meeting for early February, with potential interviews by end of February. So that's kind of a real high-level run through of everything we need to do, but it's really the next 4 months, give or take, already, believe it or not. So, and this is something we'll work with you over the next couple of weeks to refine, but this is really what we're thinking. It's kind of next steps and kind of the timeline from here till the beginning of next year.
This is really helpful. Yeah, Lindsay.
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
At what point do we need to have the sites we want to study identified in the RFS for the designer? No.
I think if you know them now, that's great. And you can obviously dictate, say, hey, we know we're going to use these two sites and these two sites only. If there's still conversation about there's other sites that potentially could be in play, then that's just something we need to alert them to, that that's going to be part of the process. And typically that is part of a process where we do a quick vetting of potential sites for a building with the designer, because they can kind of give us some preliminary due diligence. Because at the end, you really want to move forward with the process saying, okay, we looked at everything that was viable. We haven't left anything unturned, to kind of answer that question down the road that, yep, we looked at that site and this is why it didn't work, right? So you want to have as many answers to questions as possible. So if you don't have them now, that's fine. What we would suggest doing, given kind of the budget, is you want to make sure that they're carrying what they need for whatever the preferred site ends up being, and then give them some additional funding for looking at potentially a second site if it's in the running. And they should be able to quickly vet multiple sites throughout the town, to get you down to like maybe 2 sites. But they could look at a handful of sites relatively quickly. It's, this is too small. This is, too many obstacles or whatever it might be. You don't own it. Like, we could vet a lot of sites quickly that they don't need to necessarily carry additional funding for.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Steve?
Brian, one question on, call it, the landscape of design firms right now and availability of work out there. Is there any concern over, I guess, design firms who are more suitable to what our goals are and alignment of our goals, that they may have too much work right now and a board may defer selecting them? Like, are we better off slowing or accelerating a cycle so that we're in a better stance over firms that are more successful with what we're trying to accomplish from a community standpoint?
Yeah, good question. I think we really need to see, I think you're gonna have a huge response, to be honest with you. We're seeing that on all of our projects recently, that there is a great response from designers. But to your point of like who would be best suited for your project, I think we have to see who comes back, and understand what their capacity looks like. I mean, slowing it down, like I said, you're only gonna be able to slow it, in a 2-month increment realistically, and probably a max of 4 months, which I don't think at the end of the day really solves that problem. I think you'd be better suited by making sure that you got firms that have all the attributes that you're looking for, and then get to a point where we feel comfortable with that they actually have enough capacity, coming on board, and then maybe rank them accordingly based to that, right? Like, if these 3 are all qualified, but this one has the most capacity, they'd be our one. I think go from that direction. I don't think slowing it down is going to really buy a whole lot from that direction.
And I think that what Brian has stated and earlier on, that the stating exactly, be as clear about what are the important issues for this project by the committee, that will be very, the better we do of a job on that, the better it will be for the process. For one, that allow you to argue in front of MSBA DSP that this particular firm meets our need because of XYZ. And then 2 is also that by identifying what are the important issues for the project, that also allows the responding architectural firms to highlight, therefore, for you to know their capacity to address your need. And then those will be beneficial. The more clearly stated goal, the better it would be.
So from our perspective, the task for our group is to be more in harmony, or make sure we are clearly defined on our needs and wants so that we can articulate it in the best manner possible on the RFQ to give us the most suitable, call it, landscape for selection process for the people we want. It's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yes. And
Okay.
and then that can also allow you to also, there's the other end of it, is for you to argue against some firms if that become the case.
Okay, thank you for the
Gotcha.
clarification.
Thanks. Tom?
Back on the site selection, I'm not quite sure of the division of labor, but I do want to make sure that we have a defensible site selection process And I don't know what that all entails. I know we have already done a little bit of that, tiny bit, a little bit, but I just want to make sure we do that, because when we get to the point of bringing this up to the town, they're going to want to know. And we have seen things fail because of site selection mess ups.
Yeah. On that particular topic, so anything that potentially have been raised as a possible site, we probably want to vet it, at least to, even if we know that it's not a viable site, we will list it and then just simply say, it's not viable because whatever, and that will make it easier for the site selection to move forward, and then easier uh, to reduce any sort of negative reaction from the town.
Great.
Yeah, Tom, one of the things we presented, if you can see this matrix, is
Itty bitty little type.
oh, yeah, the type's really
Yeah.
small, but the colors
Yeah.
are really what you're looking at. And this is something, working with the designer, we would put this together both from a site selection perspective and then from an options analysis perspective. So again, vetting all of the sites with criteria that are important to important to Westford, and the potential sites across the top, and how those all rank. So that way, yeah, we looked at all the sites, we narrowed it down to these 3 or these 2, and then based on those 2, here's a list of potential building configurations and sizes that work on those 2 sites, that we would basically update this matrix again, so that someone looking at it to say, hey, all the ones that have the most green are most advantageous. So 100% correct. So that's different ways to get that done, but the goal is really to make sure that we have something that's very easy to communicate to the community, that yes, we've looked at everything and either ruled everything out or got to the ones you felt most comfortable with.
And if necessary, that we may do one of those charts for the sites
That's right.
first, in order to take out all the non-viable sites, but make sure that you can say to you can go back to the public to say that, yes, we look at that particular site, but because of XYZ, it doesn't work. And then that's why in the option selection, we only have the viable site moving forward.
I just think it's an important step.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we are
Absolutely.
all aligned on all the ways to build trust with the community.
Yep.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, my concern is around the budget and whether or not the budget's adequate. It looks like we got a major decision point right about the time we have annual town meeting. So somewhere along the line, we need to keep a handle on the cost. Is the market that volatile now? Whether or not, what you're thinking about the budget?
So, so the budget, the MSBA is going to make it put together a complete scope and budget, part of the SD process, schematic design process. So as we go through and start to identify all the options that are on the table, there'll be some very preliminary cost estimates based on projected construction costs. And you'll understand that, option A is a range of X million to Y million, all the way through however many options you have. However, by the time you get to a preferred schematic, meaning you narrow all the options down to the one, you will know basically a total project budget. And then the MSBA makes you sign up. Basically, you commit to the total project budget as part of your scope and budget agreement, which that is really what town meeting votes and the MSBA approves. So when you go to town meeting, you're basically making a commitment that this is going to be the total project budget. As far as the market goes right now, I think it is, again, right now, construction costs, I think we would say are leveling to slightly aggressive as far as what we're seeing for construction costs. However, keeping in mind that this project is going out to market basically 3 years from now. So by the time you get through the MSBA process of 2 years, you have about another year of detailed design before you actually sign up a contractor. You're probably going to be hitting the streets sometime in 2028, if I'm not mistaken. But that's kind of where we're at.
So you think we're okay in the design budget then?
Yeah, that's
Well,
I mean, that's
you have a feasibility budget, which will get you to the preferred option. I think you're okay with that. We'll have to be aggressive with designers with what they carry as part of their base scope. You do have some money set aside for environmental and site, and then you have a little bit of contingency. So yeah, we've seen plenty of projects done recently for about what you guys have appropriate for feasibility. However, you will have, as part of your scope and budget agreement that's put together at schematic design, you will have a full cost amendment from the designer and from the OPM for all design phase costs, all construction phase costs, and all closeout, all wrapped into that budget.
Right, but Brian, we
Yep.
really want to know, do we have enough money to do the Johnson for this phase of the project? Not, I know construction is going to be important, but we want to make sure we don't have to go back to town meeting to finish the design phase.
Well, what I'm saying is there's actually
mean-
two parts. There's two parts of the design phase. So
Feasibility
there's
stage. or
feasibility
the-
phase. Yes, you have what you have, and I'm pretty sure we're going to make that work.
Okay,
So I don't think
that's
there's
all
gonna
we
be an
needed
issue
for
with that.
right
Yep,
now.
100%. Yep. The actual design, detailed design phase, 12 months after town meeting, we get funded, basically as part of the town meeting approval. Yep.
Because one of the things we were concerned about is, for example, on the site selection,
Yep.
is we have to design site selection during this phase, and did we get enough money to do enough of the site selection? That's one
Yeah, I
of the
mean, it would have been,
going around.
ideally maybe there was a little bit more there, but I think we're gonna get it done for what you have.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Brian, it may be helpful if you could kind of restate the budget milestones of what's up and coming for like cost points, like we just talked about feasibility, full design budget, and then ECC, FF&E, all those elements. If you can touch on that from a high level, just so there's context of conversation around the quote unquote budget.
Sure. So you have feasibility now, which gets you basically now through the town meeting of end of 27 is what we talked about, right? So that's that 1.6 and change that you have. At that town meeting, we will have created during schematic design process a total project budget, which will include full design. So the year or so of design from the design team, as well as their construction administration and closeout, full OPM services all the way through that. An estimated construction cost, which will be done in multiple cost estimates. The most critical of them being the schematic design cost estimate, which will come up with what we think a value of construction is for the chosen solution. You'll have FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The MSBA's upped that allowance to $1,900, I think, per student. So basically, they'll set a budget based on that math of, hey, you got however many $1 million to spend on furniture, fixtures, and equipment. You also have about $1,500 per student for technology to outfit the school, and that's everything from infrastructure technology-wise to client devices. That'll go into the budget. We'll set contingencies for both construction hard costs and soft costs, meaning any amendments to a designer's or OPMs, and that'll basically flesh out a total project budget for the project at the end of schematic design. So by the end of the summer of 2027, early fall, you'll have a full project budget that the town meeting will vote on. If that's approved and the project moves forward, we'll execute amendments for the designer, the OPM, go through design phase for another year or so. Whether we end up going CM at risk or design bid build, get a contractor on board by the end of that year, which will be 2028, at which time you'll have a contract let for the construction. But all of that is going to come out of the funding that's approved at town meeting in 2027. So from a major milestone perspective, you basically have one more ask, right, which is the whole project in the fall of 2027. We will then let contracts and amendments go as we go throughout the rest of the project. During the design phase, so the year of 2028, there will be multiple cost estimates done. So one at design development, which is about 50% of the overall design done, and then typically two during the construction documents phase. So there'll be three more cost estimates done after town meeting votes to make sure that the construction cost is staying on track. At which point the committee will need to make decisions to manage that cost, whether that's value engineering or whatever you want to call it. But the goal is that when we let a contract go to the contractor, that it fits within the overall total project budget that was approved in the fall of 2027. Is that what you're looking for, Steve? Or yeah, okay.
Very helpful. Lindsay?
Hopefully this is my last question for today. I'm
No,
just
that's
curious
great.
what your advice would be on when we should deliberate about the pros and cons of CM at risk versus hard bid.
That's going to come into play really when we get through into PSR. We kind of understand what the potential options look like on the table. Because again, we kind of take somewhat of an agnostic approach, like the project dictates what makes the most sense, and that could be a variety of factors. But once you really kind of start to understand what options are on the table, especially around the site, potential configurations, existing school, operations, all of that stuff, start to have that conversation because you do really need to make that decision. So it's part of the schematic design budget. So you're accounting for that either way in the budget. And then if it's CM at risk, that we pretty much have it teed up for when the project is approved, that you're able to get a CM firm on board right when you start design. So they're, part of the team and helping with estimating and going through construction details and phasing and things of that nature. So to answer your question, it'll really be that schematic design phase, which will be the early part of 2027.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And if we wanted to bring them on board during the feasibility study, that would be something we could talk about too.
We can talk about it. I don't know if you have the funding to do that at this point, and typically it's done in DD.
Okay.
Great. I think we covered a lot there. So it sounds like, so we had been eyeing a meeting on November 4th as sort of a touch point to make sure if there were any last votes or endorsements that needed to happen to execute the contract. It sounds like that might also be a good point to narrow in on subcommittee versus the whole committee. Is this the right understanding that whoever is in that would also be the people who are committing to evaluate all of the respondents? Okay, so my guess is some sort of subcommittee, but Kristen, I see your hand. Is that the same thing?
Different thing, so I can wait until you're done.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll answer that. So exactly. So if you want to go subcommittee, the goal would be obviously that it expedites some of the aspects of it. That there's a handful of folks that are looking at everything, helping make that decision to bring back to the full committee with a recommendation. The full committee would then vote, the recommendations to move forward to get submitted to the MSBA. I would agree the 11-4 meeting would be great right after the OPM panel. We could get a draft of everything out in advance for folks so folks can look at it. And then a quick turnaround for a week or two to kind of have that teed up so we can get a draft of an RFS to the MSBA in by mid-November to get their comments.
Okay. Go ahead, Kristen.
So just wanted to have a discussion and we can further this in the future. So we've been meeting remotely, which has been great for people's schedules. I know once we get into some of these other discussions, we may want to meet in person when there's things that we want to, roundtable or workshop or whatnot that may not be conducive. So perhaps this committee could talk about that in the future with the guidance of Vertex, as they've seen building committees from all walks of life, and making sure that this time of day still works for people and all of that. So again, a conversation for a little bit further down the road, but just wanted to bring it up to put in people's ear.
Good flag.
Yeah, good point. And when we get a designer on board, so I think from now until a designer coming on board, it's going to be fairly straightforward of what the topics could be, which lend themselves to probably remote meetings, to be honest with you. But once the designer gets really going, I mean, there's definitely going to be meetings where you want to be in person for that and working with their work plan, which will be kind of their detailed breakdown of decision points. We'll put together that whole schedule for the building committee so we know, hey, these are the meeting dates, these are the topics. This should be in person or not in person, and we'll get that all out in front of you. 100% agree.
Great. Good.
Thanks,
Good
Brian.
point. Okay, I think what was helpful when the last time we created the subcommittee for the OPM review was knowing kind of which dates, making sure everyone's really clear about which dates would be impacted for the reviews of things, right? Because those can sometimes take large chunks of our own time or work time. So I know, Brian, you said you were going to maybe send out the documents you went through. So hopefully from there, maybe in the email, you could help me narrow in on when we're asking for people's time so that they can think about can I commit to this subcommittee like that? Would that make sense? Oh, you're on mute.
100%. Yeah. So just,
Okay.
big picture, basically early part of November after OPM is reviewing the RFS and making sure we've put the right stuff in there as far as the requirements for designers go. And then really there's not a whole lot to do until we get, we get the MSBA comments back early December. There's not a whole lot to do as far as reviewing anything until we get the proposals. And right now we're saying that, we teed that up for the first week of January. So after New Year's, you'd actually get everything back from designers.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it'd be that early part of January, which would be the reviews. We usually spearhead the reference checks as well, just because that's such a time consuming commitment.
Yeah.
So it's really the month of January where you're reviewing everything, getting that all teed up to send to the MSBA to get to a February DSP meeting.
Okay. Great. It sounds like that has a little bit more breathing room too than the OPM one. We had like 4 or 5 days. So I just
Yeah,
really
it
wanted to make
does.
sure that everybody
It
knew,
does.
like, if you had a weekend away or with family or something, then that subcommittee position might not be the best
Yeah.
fit.
Yeah, so it looks like we avoid the winter break. It looks like we're done before a February break, and then the DSP is bookend around the week of February vacation. They align their stuff with that. So
Okay. That sounds great. Thanks. So maybe
That'll
in
include-
it great. I think if everyone takes a look at their personal calendars for that those timeframes before thinking about whether to commit to the subcommittee, that would be helpful. Okay. Any other?
Val, just a
Steve?
quick clarification. Are you looking to start that subcommittee process at our next meeting or to be determined?
It sounds like that subcommittee would be we would authorize that subcommittee at our 11/4 meeting so that they can weigh in on the RFS and help create that before it goes live on the 10th. Or at least sends off to the
Yeah, that general
MSBA
timeline,
mid-November.
yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So
Okay. So
yes.
next meeting, we're picking people.
Yes, next meeting, the 4th, 2 weeks. Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. I guess I'm making sense. And I will try to get you out of here before the hour ends. Chin. go ahead.
Just one quick thing is just give Kristen a heads up that we'll be looking to meet with your procurement officer to make sure we get all the process correct in terms of advertisement.
Yep,
Great.
that's me and Assistant Town Manager Mike Edwards, who was
Yep.
in the room as well. So looking forward to
Okay.
that.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we covered a lot. We've got some great marching orders for our next meeting, so please mark your schedules for November 4th and November 11th. Was that correct? Or that's Veterans Day?
That's Veterans
Sorry.
Day.
Did you have the 18th on that timeline? I tried to jot it down.
No, I had the 3rd, and then basically to get the draft to the committee by the 10th. So anytime in between the 3rd and the 10th, we'll get it out to the subcommittee.
Okay.
And I think SBC meeting was the 18th, correct, as far as kind
Okay,
of review comments and finalize that.
Okay. Got it. All
But we
right.
can adjust that if it's going to be Mondays, and it could be whatever makes sense. It could keep it on the Tuesdays at the 18th. I mean, that's what I did. Yeah, I lined it up with
Yeah.
Tuesdays. Yep.
Yeah,
perfect.
this slot has been working, so we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Please. John, and a second.
Second.
Steve, thank you. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you
Thanks.
next
Great
time.
meeting you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Looking
Thank
forward
you.
to it. Bye.
Bye.